Good morning, folks. I hope we are all well and settled in with a nice coffee for this morning's webinar. Always a relief, as I always start the same way, to say it's nice to see the participant numbers climbing quickly when we get logged in, so I know that everything is working and everyone's kind of getting set up for the call that's coming. So just give everyone a moment. The numbers are still climbing. If you want to say hello in the chat box, then ping that in there. We do get quite a lot of people that come to all of our webinars who I think are getting to know each other now. So yeah, if you want to ping anything in the chat box, do, and we'll get cracking now as the numbers they're still climbing, but we will we'll get started. So welcome. I'm sure a few of you will know my face by now. I'm Tony Stevenson, Senior Digital Enablement Manager. And welcome to a new tax year, Spring Clean Your Practice Processes. I have got some guests on who I will introduce in a little bit once we've gone through the sort of housekeeping and getting things kicked off, and hopefully we'll all have a good learning session this morning. All right then, so a bit of housekeeping. I appreciate that there will always be people that couldn't quite make the beginning or maybe have to drop off before the end. So rest assured, today's session will be recorded. You will get a link to the session in the follow-up email, and it will be available on the FreeAgent website for you to go and access. So if there are bits that you've missed, or you have to drop off early, then don't worry about it. There's plenty of people that sign up to webinars kind of knowing they won't be able to make it, and then go back and listen to the recording at some point in the future. So we have a chat box, which I can see that people are already getting stuck into, which is great. We also have a Q&A box as well. So the difference between the two, just chat amongst yourselves, a commentary on what's going on, say hello to faces that you know. I'm sure there's a few people in there that I've met before. If you've got a specific question that you would like either Sean or Jem, who are from FreeAgent and on the flight deck today, to answer about anything kind of specifically related to FreeAgent or specifically about what we're talking about, pop it in the Q&A rather than in the chat. The reason for that is the Q&A stuff kind of gets held and it doesn't get lost in the chain. So what often happens is we'll come round, there'll be a Q&A opportunity at the end. So if you want to ask us any questions, then pop them in there. I'll go and review that at the end, and then we'll open it up to anyone that's got any kind of live questions as we go through. If you put it in the chat box, you might well get asked to move it into the Q&A section so that we can just keep tabs on those. I'm sure that this goes without saying, but we have a polite and respectful policy on our webinars. So if we can keep the chat nice and polite and respectful, we're all kind of here to learn. And move forward as a peer group, and in the past we have had the odd occasion where people have not observed the polite and respectful policy. If that is the case, which I'm sure it won't be, you might get a warning, and if it persists, then we might ask you to leave the webinar. I always use the analogy of it's like going to the cinema. You don't want somebody in the corner shouting and screaming while you're trying to watch the film. So trials and polls. So there will be, I think we've got 4 polls in the webinar today. There will be an insight one, which you find really useful to just kind of gauge the temperature of the room, find out how people are approaching the thing that we're talking about, and it helps us to kind of shape what we do in the future in FreeAgent from a content perspective and various other things. There will be opportunities for you to say, I would like to interact with FreeAgent into the future. So there will be people who are on the webinar today who are already FreeAgent partners. There will also be people on the webinar today who are not FreeAgent partners and might like to, to become a FreeAgent partner. So there will be multiple opportunities for you to indicate your interest in somebody following up with you after the webinar. And you won't miss it. So there'll be one in the middle, one towards the end, and then one right at the end after the demo, which I'll come to in a second. So the bulk of today is going to be kind of us discussing the topic of the webinar, so spring cleaning our practice processes, sort of stuff that we're going to cover in terms of systems that we use and other bits of technology and pricing and all the various stuff that we kind of potentially get an opportunity to look at between January busy season closing and the new tax year opening in April. What we found to be really successful, and this is sort of from feedback from our listeners was we run the normal webinar, which will take, give or take, an hour. At the end of that webinar, we then, my colleague Sean, who is brilliant at this, is going to show us a kind of 10-15 minute, not a deep dive, just a look and feel of FreeAgent for the last 10 or 15 minutes. We find this works really well because those of you that are already partners, you can stick around if you want to. You'll probably pick up the odd nugget here or there. But if you've not seen FreeAgent for a while, or you've never seen it at all before, it gives then everybody the opportunity to look at that at the end. That'll be sort of 10 or 15 minutes, and there'll be one sort of final opportunity for you to say, do you know what, actually that looked good, and I want us to start a partnership. So yeah, so that's the housekeeping. As I said, chat in the chat, questions in the Q&A, and we'll move forward from there. So we are now and have been for quite some time now actually CPD accredited. All of our webinars carry a CPD point. Worth mentioning as well that our accreditation also carries CPD now as well, whether you do it sort of trained or whether you do it self-serve. We found that to be hugely popular, and that's really given people a good incentive to go and dive into the accreditation, which has been kind of updated for the new stuff that got built last year shortly. So anyone that is a FreeAgent partner that's thinking to themselves, do you know what, I really should go and do my accreditation, now you can get CPD points for it, which is great. You will get that in the email after the webinar. You'll get a nice link that allows you to go and claim it pretty simply. So don't worry about it, it'll all find you afterwards. So just to introduce myself, as I said, I'm sure there's one or two of you on here that have interacted with me in some form or other. My name is Tony Stevenson. For my sins, I am a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants for England and Wales, much to a lot of people's surprise. I am the Senior Digital Enablement Manager here at FreeAgent, which is a sort of kind of lengthy and grand title for the role that I do, which is kind of three-pronged, I guess. I do a lot of this kind of stuff, talking, content generation and delivery. When I say generation, I'm the guy that rolls in and talks, and there's a huge amount of hard work that goes on in the background from Georgia and Kirsty's team that and Claire that helped to put this stuff on, and I just sort of turn up and talk for an hour. My background, so I spent the first sort of just shy of a decade in practice and industry. I trained with the Big Four. I worked in industry for a couple of years for I was telling somebody this story the other day, a super high growth, fast growing tech business, which at the time was experiencing, that I was there, quarter on quarter 100% growth. That tech business was called BlackBerry. It was actually called Research in Motion, but BlackBerry obviously was the product that everybody would recognize back in 2009, something like that. So yeah, I did that for a couple of years, worked in a smaller practice for 3 or 4 years, and I've been in the cloud accounting industry now for coming up 9 years actually. So I was Xero for a couple of years. I will have been at FreeAgent 5 years this year, a couple of other shorter stints and a year out traveling, but that kind of gives me a fairly unique take on things, having kind of got that sort of practice background, but also the cloud accounting stuff as well. So that's me. I'll be kind of guiding us through the webinar today, and I'm just going to give a quick opportunity to intro for our guests. So we're delighted to have Carol Webb and Preetesh Parmar on today. Carol, I'm just going to throw it over to you to introduce yourself quickly to the audience. That'd be wonderful if you could. Just give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, as it says there, I'm from Cashtrak. I've been running my own practice for 16 years now, after having worked as office manager and finance manager for various different sizes of companies. And believe it or not, one of our clients in my last employed job was actually RIM, but before your time, I'm afraid.
Oh, wow.
We are very small when it comes to using FreeAgent, but we are building our client portfolio with FreeAgent, but we're trying to use all of our 16 years experience to change the way that all of our clients think. And yeah, that's about us really.
Excellent. I can't wait to get chatting, Carol. Thank you very much. Preetesh, if you could do us the honours, mate, of just give us your intro and your background, that'd be wonderful, just for the viewers.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. So I'm Preetesh Parmar. It's a Tidy Money's practice based in Northwest London. Started a practice in 2008. Previous to that, I was actually working in industry, doing financial reporting, management reporting, things of that nature. Started a practice in 2008 and became in 2009 joined FreeAgent as a partner. So I was there from the beginning when there was about maybe 5 or 6 people in the office. So yeah,
I was going to say that's a real lifer. That is, we were born in 2007, but yeah, that's real early days. That is, it's excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to give a few minutes on sort of, you know, what we're going to talk about today and sort of why we're going to talk about it, and then we'll sort of dive into the conversation. So the title of today's webinar is Spring Clean Your Practice Processes. So what we found in, you know, working with the thousands of practices of varying different sizes that we work with at FreeAgent across our across our business, and specifically our sort of account management team and business development management team, is that this sort of gap between you know, busy season in January coming to a close and the new tax year sort of starting up in April gives us a couple of months of relative sort of downtime to maybe be able to sort of step back a little bit and start to think about, okay, so the mania of, you know, getting all the tax returns done in January is done, and, you know, now we've potentially got an opportunity to look at, you know, optimizing some of the systems that we've got in place, optimizing some of the technology that we've got in place, you know, and taking a look at things like, you know, are clients priced correctly? Like, am I working with the right type of clients? You know, are my staff happy? All that kind of stuff. So we see it as a sort of good opportunity. We've run this webinar. We certainly ran it last year. I think we've run it historically prior to that as well, some different version of this webinar, and it always seems to go over quite well, particularly when we're fortunate enough to get a couple of great FreeAgent partners on here to sort of discuss their thoughts and findings on that. So that's the kind of logic behind it. What we tend to find is that you know, it's easy, I think, when you sort of perhaps pitch up on LinkedIn or you know, some of the accounting conferences to sort of think that it's a question I get asked quite a lot, you know, how are we doing compared to everybody else, because we feel like we're behind. You know, and there's still the majority of, you know, accountancy practices and bookkeeping practices in the UK are still, you know, they're still well in the digital journey, and, you know, they're still going from you know, what was life and reality sort of 10 years ago, and that's still an ongoing process. So as an industry, we like to learn from our peers, and we like to be able to you know, to extract the knowledge and share the knowledge. And I think certainly in the time that I've been in the cloud accounting space, it's become you know, a very collaborative space, and accountants and bookkeepers are very happy to kind of, you know, share what works, and, you know, and as importantly, what didn't work, in order to help move the profession forward, because, you know, there's some just shy of 6 million businesses in the UK, and depending on what sort of stats you read, somewhere between 40 and 70,000 accountants, accountancy practices of varying different forms and sorts. So there's a lot of business to go around, and, you know, and that's the purpose of today's webinar, is just to discuss some of those topics. So, questions. So after this question, we'll hit our first couple of polls, but we're going to start by kicking off talking about onboarding. So onboarding is a really interesting topic, I think. Maybe that's because I'm a bit of a nerd in this area, but you know, when you take a new client on, you know, it sets the tone for everything that you're going to do with that client kind of later down the line. And, you know, we work with lots of different firms that have different approaches to this. Jo Wood from the Six Figure Bookkeeper, she talks in a lot of depth about this, and about how she manages her clients through really closely all the way through this onboarding process. But I'm interested, I'm going to start with you, Carol. Just kind of keen to get your thoughts on how you onboard clients, you know, how that system works for you. If there's any key bits in there that you think, do you know what, actually that was something that, you know, we kind of worked out, and, you know, and that might be useful for our listeners. But I'll start with you. Onboarding clients, talk to me.
I've got staff members working for me, so ultimately they may end up having the client, but I insist that every single new client goes through myself, so I can actually really understand exactly how they tick, And the majority of times that people come to you is going to be they're brand new, so they've never done it before. They've done it themselves and have made a real pickle, or they have a problem with somebody. So all three of those are problems. There's something that needs to be solved. Make sure that I fully understand the why, because I can then turn around to them and say, right, we're here to solve your problems, but be warned, it's going to get worse before it gets better, because onboarding can be painful. And if you warn them it's going to be a painful experience, but with a lovely ending, they're more likely to bend to do things your way. Doesn't always work, but I tend to find that's the way that I go in. So it's a bit like the no pain, no gain, but I try not to use that cliche.
Okay. Do you have a differing approach for the sort of, you pulled out three different sort of categories of I'm switching accountant, or I'm new, or I'm not new, but I've made a right mess of it, and and I need you to help me out sorting out that mess. Do you have any different approach for those three categories, or have you got a system that caters for all of them?
It's the same basic approach, because it's finding out what their pain points are, how they want them to be healed, explain to them when there's things that can or can't be done, because it may be that they're living in cloud cuckoo land and things cannot be done in 5 minutes that actually take 5 days and stuff like that. And then just really try and manage that issue, i.e. that pain, in the way that's best for them. So therefore no two onboardings will ever be the same, because no two people have exactly the same angst or pain or view on life. And I think once you prepare yourself for the fact that it can be hard work for you and for them, and that everybody understands that, you're going to end up with a much better relationship at the end. If you just go in saying, oh, it's just a matter of doing this, and you're going to be flying. Sorry, that's not how it works in the real world. So it's talking to them to understand what they're wanting to achieve, why they're moving or coming over, and making it as enjoyable experience as you possibly can.
And I guess setting the expectation that, what you're kind of doing through that process, without necessarily calling it that, is setting the expectation that we're adding value here, because this problem is a problem that needs to be solved, and we're good at this and we're going to help you, and it's kind of giving them an insight into what you're going to do to help them, I guess, which just kind of helps with, this is how much it's going to cost, right? And I think that
exactly, by having that discussion with them, you get to understand what type of person they are and what sorts of things they need to hear or want to hear, and you can make sure that you are talking at a level they do. So if it's like talking a foreign language, sometimes people either get it or they don't. So you have to make sure that you've learned from those first meetings exactly how it's going to go. Are they somebody that's going to get their ruler and protractor out to dot every I and cross every T, or do they just say, well, Carol says it's so it must be true, I'm just going to do what she says? You get the two extremes.
Show me where to sign, and show me how much I've got to pay in my tax bill. I'm going to come back to you, Carol, because there's another topic I want to explore on onboarding, but I'm going to throw it over to Preetesh and get his thoughts on the onboarding of clients and the system behind that.
Yeah, so to me, onboarding is also about finding the right fit. So every practice is actually different in terms of, obviously we do similar work, but how we actually do the work and the client experience does differ with different kind of skills and expertise. So when I'm speaking to a prospect, whether that's somebody who's a new startup, who has no expectations, and it's a case of explaining how things work, to somebody who's already established and looking to switch accountants because of various reasons. But it's about setting the scene as to what the experience will be working with our firm. And so it's about explaining to them that actually we're a practice that uses modern methods. So we try to systemize and automate. And if you're already an established business, then you may not be used to that. But then it's about explaining the benefits of being a practice in that way. So by standardizing our processes means that we're able to provide a consistent and reliable service. Ultimately, we're saving time, making things more efficient. But you're saving the client time, and ultimately having good systems in place gives them the clarity and comfort that they need and they can benefit from as well. So that's the kind of way we do it. And sometimes with an established business, sometimes there is a bit of resistance to say, well, this is not what I'm used to. I'm used to working in this kind of way.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to kind of give them what they're used to, but then ultimately in the long run, it becomes more difficult to actually backtrack and actually get them to work in the way which is better for them. So it's sometimes about maybe showing a bit of tough love at the beginning to really kind of have those those early kind of growing pains at the beginning, so that in the long run you have a healthy relationship.
A stitch in time saves nine, right?
Mm.
I like that. I like the standardization of processes. Do your team get involved in the onboarding, or is this something that you hold, Preetesh?
Yeah, it tends to be myself who does the onboarding. So the initial meeting is usually with myself, and just so I can really understand what the pain points are, and ultimately, I need to be clear. I need to be comfortable that we can actually address, their needs, and obviously we have systems in place, so the rest of the team can help me with the onboarding process. So, for example, we have a proposal system where we can send it, once we understand what the services are required, we send out a proposal electronically and explain the proposal. And the good thing about proposal system is that it has letters of engagement, it has a terms and conditions, it has a policies, but it clearly sets out the services that were agreed upon, and even collects the payment methods. So a lot of these kind of admin issues that can really be quite time consuming are kind of resolved right at the very beginning, even before we've actually started to do any work. And then we have a practice management system, and so the clients, once they appoint us, they actually have experience of working through a client portal where they can upload documents. They can really get a feel for what their client experience is going to be like, which is going to be a very kind of process-driven, reliable, and
Slick.
Yeah, slick process.
Nice. So if you have someone who comes to you, I'm playing devil's advocate here slightly, Preetesh, but if you have somebody who comes to you and goes, I'm switching from my previous accountant because of X, Y, or Z reason. I work like this. I'm not doing it your way. That's the end of it. Is that a decline and send to your competitor down the road, or do you sort of bend to work with them?
Yeah, I mean,
or is it probably depends, I guess, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah. In general, it's not a decline. Only because this is I cast my mind back to 5-6 years ago, even 10 years ago, where we had a mixture of clients who are using kind of cloud-based systems and clients that weren't. And the ones that weren't were kind of resistant to change, whereas the ones that were quite open to the modern methods. So it's really about education. So ideally, it would be great if the new client was to kind of apply our kind of standard methods, but we tend to say, well, we'll do things their way, but kind of give them a bit of a heads up to say it's going to be, it'll be a transition. So we'll start their way, but ultimately it will be the way we do things, because that's the kind of practice we are. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to work in different ways.
And provide them the service that you want to provide them, right? And I guess I'm an advocate of, there's a line right above which your partnership won't be suitable, but there's that grey area in the middle of like, we do some of my stuff, some of your stuff, but it's probably going to cost you a bit more because you want to do it this way, and that's outside of what we've managed to make efficient for our practice, sort of thing.
But also, also it's a great opportunity to, so when you've got a client that is kind of set in their ways, as it were, and later over a period of time they've kind of realized the benefits of changing, then they become the biggest advocates of us. So because that's because they speak to other business owners, and they can actually explain their journey to say, I used to do things like this, and this, and things are a lot more different now. So when they speak to other small business owners, they say, oh, are you not using a software like this? Are you not using receipt catcher? Are you not using bank feeds? And so they actually become your biggest cheerleaders, because they actually see and they appreciate the change that they've experienced.
That's great. Actually, that's a really interesting story, and I'm sure you take no delight when they come back in and go, Preetesh, you were right all along. That was wrong. Carol, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to ask you a slight curveball on this question, but it's all part of the same parcel, I guess. Is the onboarding element of software? So, like, you're predominantly a free agent practice, right? How does your approach to onboarding clients onto software filter into this conversation? Do you have them using it a lot? Do you use it on their behalf a lot? How does that work for you?
The majority of our clients, we're doing the work. We're just leaving them to do all of the sales. Obviously, by the time they've explained to you what they need with the sales, they might as well do it themselves. But we tend to find the majority of people who come to us are because they're wanting us to do everything else to help them out. So right at the beginning of the conversation, that's become apparent. Whether that's just because it's the way it's always been, whether we're doing something to attract only that type, I've never quite put my finger on, but that's just the way it tends to evolve. So it doesn't matter which software they're going on to, it tends to be the same journey all the way through.
Excellent. Okay, Preetesh, same question.
Yeah, it's about explaining the software in a way which says sometimes you could be paying for bookkeeping services, and there's a fine line between seeing an accountant as an accountant for tax and accounting, and seeing as an accountant as a bookkeeper. And what software does is say to a business owner, software is there to really kind of automate your bookkeeping as best as possible. And you can do as much as you want to do with the software, and the rest the accountant can take over. So as much as you feel comfortable using the software, that's how much you do. It can be 80% of it is all self-sufficient, but ultimately then they're paying for a tax and accounting service rather than a bookkeeping service. But they're really seeing the benefits of a software, and when they see actually certain things that are, especially those clients that are kind of spreadsheet based, they can see that actually it's far more easier to maintain a simple, intuitive software than to maintain spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And so that's how they can really see the benefits. So
cool.
The accounting is really there for quality control, correcting errors, making adjustments, really adding that value that they wouldn't be able to necessarily do themselves.
Excellent. So brilliant. We got some real good nuggets out of that one. So I'm going to ask, I think Jem is able to run the polls. So there's an insight poll first, and then there's more information about free agent poll second. If you are able to run them, then run them now, Jem, or run the first one and then the second one. If not, then I can do it. Sure, if you're co-host. Right. So there's a couple of questions on here, so I'll just give everyone a few minutes just to ping yes or no on the insight polls. That was slightly worrying because it sat there for a good few seconds before it started registering that people were doing it. So yeah, so there should be 2 questions on here if you just want to just answer those 2 questions. Oh. And then that gives us a real insight into, so the questions are, how often do you review your practice systems and processes? So we've got kind of the main sort of bulk is occasionally or more than once a year. And then the second question that we've got is, what types of software are you considering for 2023? So practice management, bookkeeping software, forecasting, planning, data and expense, accounts production, other, please describe in the chat box. We'll give everyone a few more seconds just to get that one finished off, then we'll run the next one and we'll jump back into the questions again. So really interested, we did some research recently at FreeAgent on kind of integrations and what people were interested in. It's quite insightful. So as you can imagine, the top one that came back was data capture, which is I almost kind of ignore that one because the correlation between data capture and bookkeeping software is so close to one that it's it's kind of part of the same piece. But the second bit that came back, which was what surprised me, was essentially kind of like communications. So it seems there's a real driver at the moment to sort of manage deadlines, kind of filings, data collection from clients, but also to centralize all of that so that it's not, if someone in Carol's team is off on holiday and then, Carol comes back, she, could dip in and, and see what had been going on that client and pick it up and, vice versa. So really quite interesting that was by far the next most important one after data capture, which is kind of, is the one that you would expect. So I'm going to run that one. Thanks so much for that, folks. And then I'm going to run just the next one now so that we've got this done, because so this is just more information about FreeAgent. So if you would like somebody to give you a shout from FreeAgent, then just drop in here, no problem. We'll give that a minute to let people run that through. Now, often what happens with these is people are not sure at this stage, so don't worry, there's a couple more opportunities for you to do this. And we always get people saying, oh, how do I make sure someone gets in touch, and slinging their contact details in the chat because they've got to disappear off or whatever it might be. So I'll give everyone 30 more seconds to fill that out, and then we'll jump back into the questions again. There we go. As I said, there'll be more opportunity for you to do this in the future in the webinar as well if you're not sure at this stage. Don't worry too much about it. Cool, there we go. I'm just going to quickly share the results of these first two so everyone can see kind of what's happening in the room. So have a quick look at those. Most people are, I guess that's why they're here, right, to learn about these things. But it's not a systematic process for doing this kind of stuff. So right, on we go. Next question. Did I skip one? Yes. So this one might be slightly shorter, but and we've sort of touched on it, I guess, a little bit. But how do you ensure that you are working with the right clients in your client base? So Carol, I'm going to start with you again. Client wanders in, they're not the right fit, or probably more pointedly, you've worked with a client and they've maybe become not the right fit for one reason or another. How do you manage that process in your firm to make sure that the clients you work with are the right clients?
I will be honest that I've always found this one of the most difficult parts of actually running a business, because when you were in your early stages, you find yourselves putting up with the wrong ones because you want to keep going. You end up putting the extra work in so that you can get the extra revenue. As you build your business, you start to become, it's much more important to do the weeding out, but then you start to think, well, I've had a long relationship with those people. It might not have been brilliant my end, but they might think it's brilliant. And it's back to something I said earlier, no two cases are the same. It's really difficult to know how to handle it. And I will be honest, we have still got a couple of clients that are hanging on by the skin of their teeth. We try to get rid of them and we can't get rid of them. And you think, and it's kind of like, they cause so much stress. And you sit in staff meetings and somebody will say, how's your week been? And you'll mention the nickname for that particular client and everybody will know exactly how your week has been. And you think, oh, hang on a minute. But then another week, they'll actually be brilliant and you'll wonder why you were so worried about it. So I would love somebody to help me answer that question myself. Now I'm getting a bigger business. Why am I still feeling that this is the worst part of running a business?
I think it's probably because you care, right? So what you've described is the absolute quintessential path to establishment of an accountancy practice, right? And that is, started my practice, had bills to pay, had clients that came in that were perhaps like, you know, B, C grade clients, but they were willing to pay me to do their books and to you know, to help me pay my bills and my mortgage and that kind of stuff. So I took them on. Often these clients come as referrals from people that you know, so it becomes personally difficult to then let them go, because you're essentially creating them a problem by saying like, oh, now I have been your accountant for a long time, and this, you know, isn't working anymore for whatever reason. So, you know, that then potentially becomes a problem around the dinner table if it was, you know, your brother that you were trying to sack off or whatever it might be. So what you were describing is not an uncommon path to where we get to now. So some things that I've seen that have worked in firms, and I guess first thing I would say is I kind of don't feel bad about it, in the sense that you have to grow to a critical mass, and, you know, it's not that common that firms are born with this very specific niche in mind and are able to just, you know, do that. Most accountancy firms are generalist practices that look after a, you know, a particular type of client, which is SMB. So, you know, it's very common. One of the ways that that I've seen in varying different forms, but essentially it boils down to this, is as part of the annual review process that you would go through kind of after you'd finished the job, to say, you know, like, well, what was the recovery, or, you know, how did the job go, that kind of thing. You know, anything we need to know for next year, forward notes and all that sort of stuff. I've seen a number of firms include a sort of grading matrix for the client, something along the lines of, and this will work for your practice, how it works, A to D, 1 to 4, and it will be like, you know, timeliness and quality of the information, and, you know, doing what they said they were going to do in line with the scope that you have agreed with them, and then, you know, more on the personal level of like, you know, how nice are they to deal with, and that kind of stuff. And ask the person who did the job to grade them, and obviously they need to be ready to kind of back it up with, you know, with evidence of some sort. They can't just go there a D4 and, you know, and expect them to get fired as a client because they support Arsenal and the other person supports Spurs, or whatever it might be. But this kind of brings in a system of client grading, and then what then happens is like your A1s will get a letter or a phone call to say, do you know what, we just really love working with you, you're our perfect type of client, you're always on time, you're always, you know, the information's always well done, you know, my team light up when we talk about you, and, you know, and thank you very much, and we'll continue to establish, you know, build this relationship into the future. And then, you know, all the way down to your sort of D4s, which get a phone call to say, or a letter or an email, or however you want to deal with it. Probably phone call is best, or meeting, just to say, look, you know, you might not be aware of this, but the way that you're working is causing us difficulty in giving you the best service. So, you know, we need to kind of address some of the methods or some of the approaches that you take. So I find a common one is small businesses thinking that having an accountant or bookkeeper is insurance against tax. So they get a tax bill every year and they're like, why have I got a tax bill? I pay my accountant, I shouldn't have a tax bill, kind of thing. I have a friend I've gone through this conversation recently with, you know, which sets things off on a bad foot. So having some form of kind of system to grade the clients, and then a process to kind of go, look, you know, over time we're gonna do the service of telling you that what you're doing isn't kind of what we want you to do, and if they persist, then eventually it's a, you know, a difficult conversation around, look, you know, we don't think we're the right accountant for you, and, you know, and here's some that might be better, you know, suited, and help them to solve that problem, and, you know, and work with a firm that, you know, is suited to them, that can deal with them in the right way. So that is definitely a method I've seen in varying different forms that sort of worked for that. Preetesh?
Yeah, we've done grading before, and grading's always been good on paper. It's literally having that conversation with the client sometimes. My personality is I hate confrontation. So if I know it's going to be like that, then I'm really going to be going into that meeting really worried. And I'm hoping to build on the relationship to get them to do to change what they're doing wrong and bring them back up to a higher quality. But then part of me wants to be a mouse and go backwards because I don't want that confrontation. So I think a lot of the problem, grading them, understanding who's who is not the difficult bit. It's the jumping from there to the next. We had one client who wanted to start doing some extra work that we were not comfortable in doing. And we told them time and time again, not just verbally, but in writing as well, that if you went down that line, we're really sorry, we're going to have to disengage because we're not comfortable in doing that work. And they went and changed over. They started doing all of it. And then within seconds of sending the email with the disengagement, there was a phone call. Why are you disengaging us? Well, hang on a minute. Have you not read the last umpteen dozen emails and problems?
Clearly
and
not,
yeah. And you think, it is frustrating. And it's like having a system in place is one thing. Doing it and acting on it is a personality thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. I'm not saying it's easy, right? I'm not saying it's easy to ring up a client you've looked after for 10 years who is confrontational to tell them that their time is up. But I guess it then comes down to how much disruption they cause in the firm, right? For your staff and for the team. I'm conscious of time, so Preetesh, I'm going to throw this one over to you. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is the biggest challenge, is because the clients that are, I guess, the most, maybe the most unorganized, or maybe sometimes the most unresponsive or resistant to change, tends to be the legacy clients, the clients that we've been serving for a long time. And it's really a case of explaining to them to say, they're actually, you're actually missing out because the whole industry is surviving on, adding value to small businesses, and small business owners tend to have this comment which says, they want their accountant to be proactive, and it's a case of say, well, actually, we work in a way to, demonstrate that we're proactive with our clients, and by these certain clients not actually doing their bit, they're actually missing out, and it also means we're not working efficiently, which means that ultimately it gets reflected in the fee that they're paying. And so it's win-win. And but it is a big challenge to actually to change. But we tend not to disengage. We just try to just persevere and help them along their journey to actually, change.
A different method that I've heard of a chap I know in the industry is having a different pricing structure for different clients depending on how they comply. So the example we were talking about was self-assessment, but he basically said we have a price that they pay up to the end of October, and then if their information comes in after October, it steps up at 10-20% a month, and by the time it gets to the end of January, they're paying double or triple what they would have paid if they'd done it in. And he said it doesn't stop me getting a dozen phone calls every year from people saying, could you desperately please file my tax return, I'll pay whatever is necessary. But that was another method, and he said they either fall into line or some of them go elsewhere because the price differential becomes unmanageable. We will jump on to the next question because I'm conscious of time. Systems. So in your practice, I know this is perhaps a little ethereal, a little wide-reaching, but how do you establish systems within your practice, and how do you ensure that those systems continue to work and improve them as we go? Preetesh, we'll start with you on this one because we've started with you on the last two, Carol. So I'll keep it fair, and we'll start with Preetesh here.
Yeah. So I guess the way we kind of build our systems, I mean, obviously we take on the actual software itself. So for example, we'd use something like Ignition for our proposals. We use Center for practice management, and then that kind of shapes the client experience. But within these systems, there's functionality, and some really, with the software constantly developing, it's a case of there's so many new features, and the challenge is really to decide what features to really include, because sometimes some features sound great, but any new feature that you implement requires work and implementing, and not just work within the practice to set it up for all the clients, but to train clients to use these features as well. So we do things as more of an evolution, and really find real kind of pain points first, and then address them, rather than seeing a feature which is announced by a software provider, which sounds, you know, nice and shiny and sounds great, but in actual fact, maybe it's nice to have, but maybe doesn't really benefit the practice or the client as much as we think it would.
The industry is littered with those failed implementations of, we really like the sound of this, but it wasn't really solving a problem or exploiting or maximizing an opportunity, and therefore it just kind of, we bought it, signed up for an initial couple of licenses, and then it's just sort of sat on the shelf and gathered dust because we realized that there wasn't sort of a real world application for, you know, for needing it beyond it seeming like a really good idea. Sometimes they come back round to roost, you know, like it's like, well, this seems like a good idea now, but actually you've got some other stuff to do first, and you know, and this will work out well in the end. Do you review the software that you have in place on an annual, semi-annual basis, Preetesh?
Yeah, it's ongoing. It's throughout the year, and it's really, we just monitor how we're performing. You know, are we hitting our deadlines? Are we working in a smooth way? Are we in control of the work that we're doing? And if there are areas where we feel that we could really kind of benefit, then it's actually this new feature, we do need to implement it, because this will really be a game changer for us. Yeah. And then it's worth doing. Otherwise we tend not to. Sometimes simplicity is good. So having a good few softwares that link together quite nicely, that really work in a solid way, is better than having too much going on. And then, because you know, there's always kind of things that don't work quite well. So it's having good kind of reliable structure that works well. And then, I like that approach. Yeah, less is definitely more when it comes to your tech stack. I think you know, wait till you can really feel that the problem is there, rather than trying to engineer a problem that isn't there and buying a solution that isn't needed, which is, you know, not uncommon. Carol, I'll throw it over to you. Systems, how do you build them? How do you improve them? How do they work in Cashtrak?
The building, I think, is all very much in the past now, because it's very much when you first start up on your own, you've got your ideas from your own experience how to do things, but you need to do it cheaply and effectively. So you're probably down to your Googles and your Microsofts, and you're using things like Google Sheets and Excel to base it so you can plan what you're doing. It's like everything. Building a house, you've got to have the foundations, so therefore you want the plan before you go to software. As you get bigger, you then start using the softwares. They in turn evolve. Sometimes they're evolving against the way you want to go, so you have to move. Sometimes others are evolving in a way that you think, actually, I'd never ever thought of that. So I think it's very much a matter of, it's the reviewing and being a reactive change all the time. You hit something in the way the whole process is working that you've never come across before. So why have we not got a system to cover for that? Because it's something brand new, MTD, for example. You've got to then just be reactive to what's happening around you to say that your system is either fit for purpose or not fit for purpose. If it is still fit, but just can't do that bolt on, how do you adjust it? If it's something totally radical, that's when you've got to move. But I'm always the one that I think I must infuriate my staff, because I'm what I would call a belts and braces person. If I'm going to move to something else, I want us to parallel run for an amount of time, and sometimes they think it's probably too long. But if you find the jump was wrong, you don't want to jump to somewhere else. You want to reset and then learn from what you've done wrong. So you still need that other system in place. So I think it's the building is something that happens as soon as you start your practice. Development and improvement is what's happening all the time, and it's every day. As one of my girls would say, every day is a school day. It's not just in learning what you do in your job, it's how to actually keep your job working for the benefit of your staff as well as the benefit of your clients. I mean, we started off with using the Microsoft systems. Everything was on spreadsheets. We've moved on to using software, but we're now finding that with the way Microsoft have actually developed now, there's things in there that if we'd have known were coming, we may not have put some other systems into place, because it
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be so easy to actually use. And this is where going to the various exhibitions like Accountex, DAS, etc., really does come into its own, because you, what's that? I hate the saying, but everybody is that you don't know what you don't know. You go along, you see something, it gives you that eureka moment of, that's really going to make my life easier, or that's really going to make my client's life easier. Don't rush into it. Step back. Why do you think it's easier? Is it just something that's a 5-minute high because you like it? Or is it really going to make yourself better in the way you perform or your clients perform?
I think I like the idea of having a system to review your systems. Very meta. I'm a big fan of the I'm sure you probably both read or at least heard of the E-Myth, the book, the E-Myth Revisited. I know it's a bit feels a little bit dated these days, but the premise is still remains very true, that the system is the way, and that actually the idea of your staff turning up to manage the system, and if the system does something wrong, then we need to fix the system, rather than it being people turning up to do jobs, people turning up to manage a system that does a job. Which is a subtle but interesting distinction that helps with scale and exits and all sorts of other things for further down the line. So kind of in this little area here that we've got between sort of tax return season finishing and the new tax year starting, do we take this as an opportunity to kind of review what we're doing for our clients, and perhaps perhaps maybe try and offer them some increased services or something different from what's there previously? Is that something you do on an ongoing basis, an annual basis? Not at all. Carol, we'll start with you.
Definitely ongoing, because there's always going to be a conversation where the client comes up with something. Actually, I can help you by doing something different. But at the same time, annually is also good, because if you send them some form of communication to say, were you aware we now offer this, or we could do this for you? If the conversation hasn't cropped up during the year because they haven't thought to mention it, or it just hasn't surfaced enough due to other problems, they're at least aware that something they could help with. But definitely listening all the time to what they're saying, because it's back to the initial saying of pain points. You don't always know necessarily what's happening within their business. You think you're seeing everything, but you're not. There could be something you're totally unaware of. Trying to engage in conversation to find out what their issues are. You can tell us, well, actually, did you realize I can do that? I'm going to talk to you about making that life a little bit easier for you. So definitely review it all the time.
Do you find, is it something that your team does naturally as part of their day-to-day conversations, and that they come to you or pursue it themselves when they see that opportunity?
Absolutely, definitely. It wouldn't be the first time one of them has just picked up the phone and said, by the way, I'm going to arrange for you to have a call with this particular client because of the conversation that's just happened. Or in a staff meeting, an offhand comment by one person could make another one realize, hang on a minute, actually, that's what I should be doing with my client.
It's a cultural thing, right? I've worked in environments where and I've experienced environments of practices and bookkeeping firms where they are the staff are not empowered to have those conversations because of like kind of clock watching and sort of maybe an embedded fear of if I call the client up and they ask me a question that I can't answer, I feel like that's not very good. So therefore, I'm going to just kind of avoid that conversation, because actually I don't want to put myself in a situation where somebody asks me some tax question that I don't know the answer to, which happened to me thousands of times in my failed tax career. But it's great that you've created a culture where they feel comfortable to just have those conversations around the business and, and find out, what's going on, and, and if there's any way they can kind of help and translate into an increased deepened relationship with them from a service line perspective. So
it's encouraging
excellent.
them to have the courage to say they're aware of something that can help the client, even if they're not commercially aware or totally understanding it. Just that,
Yeah.
I know we have had this conversation with another client. Let me introduce you to the people who can. Always admit that you don't necessarily know the answer, but you know that there is a mechanism within the company to help.
Yeah. Preetesh, I'll throw it over to you. And just before you answer, what I'm going to say is we've got one more question after this, and then we'll kind of have a quick sort of Q&A at the end. We might run a little bit over. So if you've got any kind of questions that you want to fire into the Q&A that you'd like myself or the panel to address, stick them in there now. And it might be that Jem and Sean can answer them while we're going, just to make sure we kind of cover off. We don't want people to leave having not been able to answer their questions. So yeah, go for that if you've got them. Preetesh, over to you on sort of services and how you manage that process within your firm.
Yeah. On this, this is more and more essential now, because as things are becoming more and more kind of process based and things are ticking over quite nicely, sometimes there's less reasons to actually check in with clients. And so I guess before for our practice, the clients that used to have management reports, they used to have the regular reviews. But now what we're finding is having reviews with even the clients that are more kind of compliance based demonstrates value, because what we're able to do is to say, yeah, everything's ticking over quite nicely, but you know, what more can I be doing to serve you? And it's really about demonstrating value in the sense that is kind of going beyond compliance and explaining to them that actually now everything is in order. Now we can focus more on the future. And the future is about running a predictable business, running a business which says, you know, when your tax liabilities are going to be and how much they're going to be, and having an appreciation of the financial numbers to say there's certain rules of thumb as a business owner that you can actually use to know how much to pay yourself. And from that, that's quite empowering, because from that raises more questions and there's more interaction you'll have, because when they start having some knowledge and rules of thumb, it will spark more questions, which enables us to really demonstrate more value. And so, you know, why should it be that the small businesses rather than the micro businesses have management reports and that kind of service where they're really kind of helping them, you know, make better business decisions, when actually, you know, micro businesses, you know, often need the same kind of guidance, and they're really missing out. So really what we're saying is, yes, it's good to have, you know, everything in order from a compliance point of view, but and that's good in terms of building up a practice which is volume based. But it's also important, you know, growth in the industry, I feel, is more about adding value and moving a conversation about running a predictable business is really a way to demonstrate value and growing. And to me, it may actually be that you end up having fewer clients but doing more for them than to always be chasing, you know, the volume of clients doing basic compliance.
It's a really interesting idea around, you know, actually the less friction there is in the relationship, in the sense that, you know, you've got an underlying compliance engine that's purring and working perfectly, creates less touch points, which actually in the longer term might actually be a challenge, because, you know, it's like, well, that's all just working really well. They're raising the sales invoices, the bank rec's fine. You know, I always log in and the information's largely correct. I don't need to call them to change whatever or find out what that massive payment was, because, you know, they've labeled it up, and it's, you know, that distance then becomes easier to maintain. And we all know that, you know, those conversations are the thing. You know, you rarely get that level of insight from an email, right? It's a phone call. Clients don't email to go, oh yeah, on this offhand, I've just decided to go into this new business or start this new revenue stream, or had this conversation with this person that you might be able to put them in touch with. That kind of stuff, that, you know, that happens person to person rather than email to email. So just conscious of time, so we'll just jump on to the last question, which we could probably do a whole webinar on in itself. But pricing, it's a thorny subject, right? Everyone has a relationship with pricing, and I always kind of quote James Ashford and recommend his book Untapped, which really just kind of is a really good insight into, you know, how accountancy firms work, the margins that they work on, and then the, you know, the penalties for, you know, underpricing and giving discounts. How do you manage pricing, Preetesh? Is there in your firm, do you have a system, a method?
This is one of my biggest challenges, I would say.
It's one of the biggest challenges. It's everybody. It's all
I think with this one, the more we're putting established our kind of legacy clients on our proposal software, that's helping, because all of a sudden we're not just rolling a fee that they've had for the last few years and just rolling it year on year. We're able to give some options. So the good thing about it is to say, well, yes, they're receiving level of services at a set fee, but in actual fact, compared to new clients, that, you know, they're actually paying less. So what we do is we show them options, and what a good proposal software allows you to do is actually, you know, set you know, gold, silver, bronze with a list of services at different fees, and allow them to choose. But the interesting thing is they can at least see the value they're already receiving compared to, you know, over the course of many years. And for some certain clients, you know, we've not actually increased our fees at all. And so it's really an eye-opener for us to say, actually, this can't continue. And so having a proposal software forces us to really identify, you know, these clients and really have the difficult conversations, because it is difficult, because on the one hand, you know, we need to be paid for the value we're providing, but the other thing is it's about, you know, relationship business as well. It's about someone's been with you for 10 years, you want that relationship to continue, and it's a balancing act. And but the proposal software allows that communication to, you know, to manifest in the best way.
Excellent. I'm a full believer in that approach of it's a cultural thing within firms as well. So it's something that tends to be held with the senior leadership within accountancy firms, the pricing conversations. And actually, I found some firms that I've worked with recently who've sort of taken the approach of not forcing people who aren't comfortable having these conversations to have them, because that's not the right thing to do, but culturally communicating throughout all staff the importance of clients being on the right price. And it, you know, nothing brings it home more when you see that graph of, you know, let's say your firm runs on a 20% margin, somewhere between 10 and 35 is, you know, is fairly par for the course. 20 is, you know, not uncommon. Let's say your client is priced correctly and that they pay you £100, and that means you've got £80 worth of costs that are attributable to that client. Client says, can I have a 10% discount, or are you underpriced them by 10%? Seems like a little thing, but actually you've given away half your margin, and that means that you need to service twice as many clients to make the same amount of money than you otherwise would have done. And that has a knock-on effect into absolutely everything, because it means that your staff are having to look after twice as many clients. It means that they have to spend that much more time doing work on other clients. That the piece we were just talking about previously with those conversations, Carol, the pick up the phone and just spend a bit more time with them, that becomes much harder to do. All these sort of, you know, these knock-on effects of of pricing being not where it needs to be. And on that, I'll throw it over to you, Carol, as our final kind of question and point. How do you manage pricing within your firm?
Well, as you've already said, it definitely is a big challenge, and there is the issue of making sure you keep the relationship going. But we do use a proposal software as well. We've programmed it based on transactional method. So when we get new clients in, we point out to them that this is based on the initial conversations we had, and it could therefore change. So the aim is to get a 3-month review in, possibly another 3 months after that. It's never actually ended up happening every quarter, but the aim is it really should be every quarter. And we're moving this year back to trying to do that. But I also encourage all of my staff to really speak to myself and the head of operations here, that as soon as things start to change, whether it's less work or whether it's more, make sure you keep us in the loop and we can have those conversations with the clients. And you mentioned earlier about self-assessment clients and somebody else trying to charge more. We did many years ago now something very similar. We sent a letter out in April saying that we need you to get all of your paperwork to us by a particular date in the year. If you don't do it, we will charge a premium. We never ever stated what that premium was. You'll be surprised how many clients actually made sure they hit that deadline. We only had a couple that didn't, and they're the same offenders every year. So now we send exactly the same letter out every year, and again, you get the same offenders. So with the normal everyday bookkeeping, we need to try and find a way of having a similar reaction, making sure that we keep on top of everything. It's going to be a totally different methodology because it's a different animal. But what we want to do and what we have done has been different. We know what we should do. And as I said, this year, the aim is to really button down exactly how we do review and make sure that we point out to the clients that those prices can go down as much as they can go up. And I think that then really helps that relationship part.
Yeah, and I think that setting the scene from the beginning that, you know, this is not an exact science, and that, yeah, you came to us with, let's say, 20 transactions a month, and you now have 50 transactions a month or 100 transactions a month. Now, might be that your business feels the same to you, but to us it's not, because there's more review time, there's different types of transactions, the scope is increased, you know, and we need to make sure that we're able to service you as well as we can. And that means that everybody in our client base needs to be on the right price, give or take, as far as possible, with as little lag as possible, to make sure that we're able to give you the right service, because it impacts on your service if you're not priced right and everybody else isn't. You end up in that situation where you've got, you know, more clients than you need to make the same amount of money, which is, you know, not good for anyone. So we are at the end of the questions. We're slightly over. I'm just going to jump into the Q&A and see if there have been a few. So the first one was, does Preetesh use a specific proposal system, which he does, which is Ignition? Is that right?
Yeah, I use Ignition.
Yeah. Carol, do you use Go Proposal? Have we got one of each on the webinar?
Proposal, yeah.
Yeah. Does definitely have a certain place in the industry, specifically Go Proposal. I hear all the time people saying it's been genuinely transformative in their practice. You know, go check it out. Same with Ignition. You know, super useful bits of kit. So there's a question about practice management software. So we integrate with Accountancy Manager, we integrate with Center, we integrate with a couple of the others, and then we're talking to a couple of the others as well to sort of bring that up to full kind of capacity. And Addy, we have had the question of, is the recording going to be delivered as well? So yes, it is. Given that I have sort of threw it out to everybody to ask about being putting the Q&A in, and that's kind of what we've had, and that we're over time, I'm just going to launch the next poll, and then while I do that, so find out more about becoming a free agent partner. So while I do that poll, what I'm going to do is, we've done the Q&A. I'm just going to say a big thank you to a bunch of different people. So first and foremost, obviously, Carol and Preetesh. It's been super useful. Really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure we could have yarned on for another couple of hours about any number of these topics. Picked up some real nuggets. It's been super insightful, and I'm sure that our listeners, most of whom have stayed on for the entire duration, have got loads from it. So thank you very much for giving up your time and sharing with the industry your experiences. It's been really, really interesting, really, really useful. I will say also a big thank you to Georgia, Claire and the team who put these webinars on. You wouldn't believe how much work goes into making sure that they all kind of run smoothly, and I just kind of turn up and talk for an hour, which is you know, a very, very small part of making sure that everyone gets to know about them and then gets followed up with them. I say thanks to Jem and to Sean for manning the flight deck, and any questions that have come through have been ably dealt with. And then I would like to say a big thank you to our listeners as well, for giving up their time. Super appreciated. Really hope that you got plenty out of it. If you did, show your love in the chat box, and I'm sure Carol and Preetesh will take a few moments to go through and bask in the glory of the knowledge that was shared this morning. And again, thank you for listening. So what we are going to do now is I will hand over to my colleague Sean, who is going to take us through a quick 10-15 minutes showing FreeAgent. If you want to stick around, listeners, you are more than welcome to. Just going to end that poll there, and Sean will take us through that. Preetesh and Carol, thanks again, and class dismissed for our panelists. You're more than welcome to drop off now. So thanks again, everybody. I will stop sharing my screen, and I will make Sean a co-host. There we go. Bang, straight in.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Tony. So
No trouble.
that was a lot of information for everyone to sort of take in there. It was really good. Again, got to say thank you to Preetesh and Carol for giving all us that sort of insight. What I'll be doing today is keeping it very light for you guys, giving you guys a light touch on how your client's going to use FreeAgent to start with. We're going to go over initially setting up a bank feed. We'll then touch on the capture for later functionality on the mobile. These are sort of diamonds within the mobile app, which we'll touch on now. So to start with, you'll see on the left-hand side of my screen, I have the desktop version, which your client would normally see, and this is their sort of landing page. On the right-hand side, you will see the mobile view that I've got alongside it. Now, this is just simply the overview page, but it's called the Insights page on the mobile app. Now, what we're going to do is simply on the mobile version, we're going to come across to the bottom, and you'll see we've got 4 main sort of headings. Insights, money out, money in, and banking. That's basically one of the main ways you would navigate the mobile app. What we're going to start in is in the banking screen. And you'll see there, we've got simply a list of bank accounts. We're going to simply follow that on the desktop version and come across 2 bank accounts. And what we're going to do is look at connecting a bank feed. Now, obviously, this is what you would want your client to do as soon as they get within the license. So we'll come into the business current account on the desktop version, just to show you the desktop process first. Initially, they would click the Enable Bank Feed button at the top right here. That would allow them to select which type of bank account they are currently using. I'll use NatWest for this scenario. We'll tick what type of account it is. And then we will follow that by clicking Connect to My Bank. We will then be taken through to the NatWest side of things. And at this point, your client's then rummaging around for those login credentials for their business account that they only use once on a blue moon. So yeah, they would enter that information. They would then get onto the next screen, select which account they're looking to connect, click connect, and they would then be brought back through to the FreeAgent side of things, and those transactions would start coming in. Now, there is a slight difference on the mobile version when you're going through that process. Now, just starting on the right-hand side of my screen now, we're going to click onto one of those bank accounts like we did in the desktop version. We're going to use the 3 dots at the top right, and that will give us the option to start Enable Bank Feed. Clicking this button here will allow us to then go through that same sort of process, selecting who we bank with, selecting what type of account it is, and then clicking that same Connect button. Now, instead of being ushered through to a sort of NatWest website on the desktop sort of version, we have actually got the NatWest mobile app on the mobile phone as well. So it's simply switched us between the 2 apps, giving us the option to say we've already got an account. However, if we were already logged into that NatWest app with our login credentials, then it's just going to simply scan our biometric face scan or finger ID, whatever it is we've got set up on the mobile, and it would go ahead and connect the bank feed up as well. Again, selecting just simply what account it is you want to connect, and then you would just simply be brought back through to the FreeAgent app. So you're never actually touching the mobile browser at all. So again, that process, it can be done in the desktop version for your clients that prefer to use the desktop. However, if they'd rather do it on their mobile when they're out and about or on the couch, then that's also an option. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you to start with, is how easy it is for your clients to set up a bank feed. So having those transactions come in automatically isn't really a burden on your client. They don't really need to spend the whole evening looking into it. They can do it on their couch in front of the TV as well. What we're going to look into next is the mobile section. You'll have a green plus. Now, this is what your clients can use to simply quick add items into the license. Now, as you can see there, there's a whole list of items they can add: invoices, expenses. The mobile app does have a whole range of different functionality that your clients can make use of. It's very similar to what you have on a desktop version. The only sort of limitations come around filing functionality and account reports generation. But going back to the mobile, you'll see at the bottom of that list, we have capture for later. Now, if you're not aware of what capture for later is, it is just simply a way for your client to basically capture those receipts on the go, and then also simply save it to the files area within the license, leaving it for either themselves to deal with later or yourselves as the accountants. Now, with the capture for later functionality, you'll see there we also have some auto extract functionality that it was sort of touched on during the webinar today. Now, I've got a receipt in front of me, and I'm just going to simply do a live demo for you just now. So I'm going to click continue to camera. I'm then going to hover my phone above this receipt I have on my desk. And without clicking anything, you'll see there that that receipt has been captured. I've not clicked capture at any point. Basically, the information has been recognized and it's been captured for me. I can then click done. If it looks okay, if it doesn't, I can retake it. What I would then get your clients into the habit of doing is just simply deleting that file name, as that's not really going to help you when you come to look at the files area later on. What we would then suggest is then getting your clients to simply date the receipt with the date of the receipt. We'll date the file name with the date of the receipt, should I say, and then simply includes the vendor's name. Again, it's just going to make it easier for you or the client themselves if they have to then use this later on. There you go. I've entered the file name with the vendor's name and the date of the receipts. I would just simply click save, and you'll see there it's now been added to the files area of that license. Now, I am logged into the exact same license on the desktop version. If I click onto the company name, top right, and come into the files area, you'll see there that I have that same receipt and it's fully updated like it has on the mobile version as well. So as you can see with cloud-based accounting systems, it's instantaneous. It'll instantly update with anything you do. Now, if I click the down arrow on the desktop version, you will see the image of the receipt as well as any extracted data, giving you that sort of quick like button to convert it to an out-of-pocket expense. Again, clicking that will just simply attach the receipt and fill in the date and the value fields for you. You just need to make sure you've got the correct claimant selected, the correct nominal codes, the correct VAT rate, and you can go ahead and create that. Once you create this expense within the license, it will remove it from the files area, so you won't need to worry about duplicating entries. So it is quite intuitive that way. So this will definitely help your clients with being on top of their receipts, making sure that they don't lose them. As you can see on the mobile app there, it's also removed it from that section as well because I've already converted it to an expense. But yeah, that's all I'm going to sort of cover with you guys today. And unless we've got any questions, that's pretty much all we're going to be covering today. So thank you for sticking around and listening to my short demo. And if you would like any more sort of demonstrations like that, please do get in touch with your account manager or someone at FreeAgent and we can definitely set that up. But thank you again. And Gemma's just let me know we've got a quick poll going. So yeah, let us know if you would like a more in-depth demo. So you don't even need to get in touch with your account manager. We'll get in touch with you. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Brilliant. Cheers, Sean.
No problem, Tony. Not a problem, Chris. Thanks for sticking around.